Welcome to Work in Progress, Conversations with Creators. I'm your host, Logan Royce Beitman. On today's program today, I have with me Anthonee Smith, who's a local experimental filmmaker who's doing lots of really interesting stuff. I saw a couple of his films at the Guild Cinema. We had a great conversation. I hope that you enjoy.
If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
All right, Anthonee, thanks you for joining me. It's great having you here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I saw a couple of your films. I saw one called Plants at the Guild Cinema here in Albuquerque. They'd been advertising it, doing trailers. I was like, this looks interesting. And I always like that, like a film with a very simple word for the title. And then, and it kind of does what it says on the tin. Like it is a film about plants, you know? And then I saw another one the next week called The Museum, which was also really, really interesting. And we'll talk about both of them, but let's talk first of all about Plants and how did this, tell people what it is, maybe?
Well, Plants is an experimental musical documentary, is what I've been calling it. But when I do what I like to do right, it's honestly hard to categorize. So people could categorize it however they want. But I've been calling it experimental musical documentary. And I went to the Botanical Gardens, the biopark, every day for a year. And on one day I'd go to the garden, the next day I'd go to the zoo and just repeat that cycle. And there will be a companion piece to this, but that's not finished yet, Animals for the zoo one.
Yeah.
So I shot this over a year in 2024, edited it in 2025, and we finished the soundtrack up this year. So it was 3 years in the making overall. But yeah, it's just looking at plants, and the soundtrack's vaporwave. And the goal was kind of to make something like Adult Swim's Off the Air or something, just something very visual and audible. Kind of like a trip where you don't have to take anything or go anywhere.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, I like to go to botanical gardens and, take walks in nature. And, and I think that, if you go into it with that kind of mentality and you just sort of vibe with it, it's a really cool experience. I think if people are going in with expectations that this is like a documentary in a traditional sense, it's not really what it is. But you have kind of extended shots of plants, sometimes very beautiful, gorgeous shots, sometimes not. Sometimes it seems like you're deliberately focusing on maybe some muddy part of the pond where there's but you find beauty in it.
A big goal of mine making this film was I love textures. And when I walk around gardens, I love looking really close at the plants or the ecosystems and finding those muddy spots or maybe those less looked at moments. And also, obviously, there's a lot of pretty shots in the film of flowers, but I do love some of my favorite shots are just of the moss in the pond.
Yeah.
And, actually, I think that is my favorite shot in the film of just the mossy pond, that main pond in the garden. And at first, if you don't go there a lot, the perspective might make it seem like it's further away than it is, but then I get to the fish and I love that shot. That's my favorite.
Yeah. I think one of my favorites anyway is the one with the bees. I don't know what plants they are, but there's some flowers and there's bees flying around. And, and it's because you're not zoomed in on the bees. It's a little further away, but you sort of see them. And it just becomes part of the texture.
And that was something I loved to observe when I was doing the project, just getting to film that happening in front of my eyes. And I've always loved animals, but I honestly probably never sat down and just looked at bees long enough until I made this movie because they're the most amazing creatures just to watch. And editing the movie, I love pausing on the bees when I was editing it because they're insane. Their anatomy, they're magic. I don't know how they work so well because it's so foreign to us apes and hominids.
Yeah. And they're wings are kind of, I don't even know, yeah, and how they can sort of pause in the air and do what they do, but amazing. Anyway, bees. So, but then, so the vaporwave soundtrack, for people that don't know vaporwave, maybe say what that is.
Vaporwave is an I'd say kind of a subgenre of sound music or soundscape music, where they take samples of 80s music primarily and slow it down, resample it, and reorder the song. And sometimes there's some vaporwaves that are just kind of like slowed down choruses, but we were trying to go for the more complex one where we're making like new arrangements from these songs, and we specifically sampled city pop, so Japanese pop from the 80s.
Yeah. And I think, there's also like an art, like visual component to vaporwave as well. Like if you think about those old like 80s kind of electronic music albums with all the neon and, kind of grids of streets and whatever, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of part. And I think that, I mean, you keep it pretty simple visually what you're doing, but there's some transitions that you put in that are kind of like old, like you'll solarize or do some kind of when you fade between one scene and another that are kind of vaporwave inspired, I think.
I use the free version of DaVinci Resolve, and this was actually the first movie I edited fully. Usually I work with my great editor and one of my best friends, Kenny Vigil, and he's one of the other founding members of Fruitbird Films. So yeah, it was a new experience for me actually editing, and I found a lot of those kind of like cornier. I didn't go to the super corny editing tricks in DaVinci Resolve, but like that, Flash.
Yeah.
I loved that for some shots when I'd pan up to the sky, and I thought it was a bit of a risk, but I think it paid off ultimately seeing it in theaters. Like I love kind of the dissolves. It adds to that trippy kind of Adult Swim late night vibe I wanted to give the film. And I think Vaporwave's visuals and style in general has that kind of like late night lost media vibe.
Yeah, and you do some of that with the museum too, which we'll talk about in a minute. But then the other, and I guess since you mentioned, so it's Fruitbird.
Yes, Fruitbird Films is the film troupe I am part of and one of the founders of.
Yeah, like I was saying, this is your film, but it's kind of
I always
Fruitbird.
Work with a group. This one, the help came in with the sound and the music with Kenny Vigil and Robert Velasquez. Robert Velasquez produced the album, like did the actual heavy lifting and editing these tracks and rearranging them. And me and Kenny, lifelong Vaporwave fans, sat there as long as the genres existed and, gave our suggestions on the arrangements and where we wanted the skips or things to get more anxious rather than kind of boppy. So we all contributed. But yeah, huge thanks to Robert Velasquez. He did an amazing job mixing this album and producing it. And his work's awesome. He has a musical act called Rob the Moon. It's his solo work. So if you like the music in this movie, check it out. It's more folky, what he does solo. And also Kenny Vigil has a Tranquility Wizard, which is another kind of like folk, trippy kind of rock solo act. It's cool. I love their music.
So if you're listening, check them out. They have Instagrams and things you can follow along and see. Yeah. So then the other thing, you have like a voiceover, which is like a very low, distorted kind of robot-ish kind of voice. That's like a voice from the future, from a time when maybe nature has disappeared or a lot of things that, and so we're kind of looking at nature from the perspective of this like future, which I think is part of this vaporwave thing too, because you think of vaporwave, it's kind of with like, it's electronic music, it's cities, it's Tokyo, it's, it's neon. It's kind of also the opposite of nature in a way, if you're thinking of it in that sense. And so bringing this sort of disembodied, almost robotic voice from the future and this vaporwave concept to a nature film, it's maybe a little bit counterintuitive, but I think it's like, in a way, maybe that's the way to connect us more to nature. Like you recognize that we are divorced from it. We are destroying nature all the time as humans now. And how do we reconnect if you do like just a straightforward, like kind of naive nature film? I don't know, maybe that doesn't seem like this seems more honest in a way to say like, no, we are divorced from nature.
Oh yeah, because we are. Like totally. Like even people that care very deeply about nature, like me, are I spend so little time in it realistically, outside of just like going to the Bosque or the biopark, or we have the Sandias close by. But yeah, I live in an urban environment. Everyone I know, for the most part, lives in a city, in a suburb, or in a in a concrete jungle.
Right.
And we are very divorced from nature. So that's a big. Actually, Kenny Vigil, when we first started editing the movie, we knew it was a vaporwave album, and so I knew I was going to do this robotic voice. And he suggested, I think it's been a while since we started the album, but I think the exact suggestion was like, you should make this for aliens. And that led to snowballing into the idea of like, yeah, this is a scientist who's lived through an ecological collapse, and because of it, the world's ended, and he's just in some bunker making a documentary for either evolutionary replacements or something else evolving on the planet, or aliens who find it and begging them like, if this place is alive again, don't do what we did to it, because this place is wonderful. Right. And vaporwave for me has always been about capitalism and like the nostalgia we have for it and the dangers of that. Because we all have like nostalgias for capitalism in a way. Like we all grew up with like our action figure brand. Like I was a huge Star Wars kid. I'm still kind of in a Stockholm relationship where I'll at least check out every new thing at least once. And we have, and like in the visuals of vaporwave, it always reminds people of like 90s Taco Bell, and it like these dangerous, like these things that consume so much resources to make product. But I think that's where the like nightmarish kind of vibe that vaporwave can get sometimes comes in. Is it like you're having fun in this nostalgia and the more boppy tracks, but then it reminds you, it's like that it doesn't get anything done. And I guess the scientist himself isn't really getting anything done in the story, because he's just being nostalgic for the world that's now gone. I mean, it's probably all that's left to do for him. But those are things that are really interesting to me, of like growing past those things and like finding the value in the past and stuff, but knowing when to move from it and how to grow and make those big leaps and big changes like we need to make, or maybe even like on a personal level a character needs to make or something. But in Plants, it's more of a broad scope of humanity, hopefully.
Yeah. And so there's that kind of sci-fi element. And I think that, it's exciting. And I hope that there's other filmmakers out here listening to this, tuning in, and because there's something inspiring to me about the idea, like, you have like no budget or very low budget, and you're like, I want to make this, sci-fi film about a time after, it's kind of like you think, well, how can I do that without the big budget? And now actually with AI, you could be using those tools and doing something that's has effects and things. You're choosing not to do that. You're doing a very old school, hands-on, analog kind of, I mean, not technically analog because it's digital, but it has that feel of like a very analog, rough sort of thing, which I really like. And I'm thinking, I mean, it makes me think of like Jean-Luc Godard when he made the film Alphaville in whenever that was 68 or something, that was like a sci-fi film about the future that also has this like roar kind of robotic voice that is similar, that reminded me of. But like basically, he didn't have a budget, and he's just shooting in like Paris in hotels and stuff. It's not the future, it's the present day. But he, with the voiceovers and the way he does it, it's stylized, but you go with it. You're like, yeah, this is the future. He does some solarization, and you're like, yeah, this is the future. Or I don't know if you ever see like Chris Marker, La Jetée, which is what inspired 12 Monkeys. But that was just this, it's all done with just still images, and it's like this future society. It's living in sewers and stuff, but very low budget, very simple, still images with a voiceover. And it's like, you can do this, people. You don't need a big budget. You don't need anything. Just go out. You have an idea. You have cameras. Do a voiceover. Do something. Create a story.
That's a big thing at Fruitbird, is that I all of us just like, you can't wait around for a budget or certain kind of resources. And we definitely don't want to touch AI. If we could afford film and not shoot digitally, we would go film.
Yeah.
Like, we love practical and tactile things. And I love a cheesy practical effect 100 times more than even a great digital effect. And I'm not saying like 3D animators aren't artists. They are, because there's some amazing animated characters in that realm. But AI is a point where no human involvement, it's not art at all to me. And especially making movies where a lot of our messages are like, take care of the earth, take care of the environment. I think using something that eats up so much of our clean water would be just hypocritical. So yeah, I definitely am very strongly against AI. I've become a little paranoid whenever I find like a new sketch comedy, like Filmmaker or something. I see background images that don't like quite look right. I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm very against AI. But yeah, so practical is very important to us. And in this film, there is no effects. This is all nature that I actually shot. But I do want things to feel real and feel used. And I love the vibe of like VHS and stuff. If I could shoot on tape, that's something I would do. So we do try and emulate that. And that is something that attracts me to vaporwave, is the fact it is trying to feel like it's on tape or cassette. And like, I think that's why a lot of our movies take inspiration from the genre and use the genre. And at this point, we make art in the vaporwave banner or synthwave banner.
Yeah. I feel like there's like this. Well, I mean, do you let me ask, do you know other filmmakers that are doing stuff like this?
Not
locally?
Stuff like this locally, no.
I think there may be, but I think there's going to be, I think there's people doing it other places. And I think there's going to be more of a interest in this kind of filmmaking, because people are starting to already get a little bit sick of the AI and the hyper, because you can create really pretty realistic effects and stuff now, and even people are, like the CGI and stuff of big blockbuster superhero films and stuff. Of course, I think there's always going to be an audience for that, probably. But then there's like, I think that there's starting to be a little bit of a turn where people want something that's a little more handmade, a little bit, and I'm seeing this with writing also. People, there's whole discussions happening about, which is what I think about because I'm a writer. What is it that AI can't do? It can't have a point of view. It can't write things that are kind of weird, and so like there's a soullessness to it, even if it can be technically very good. And so I think that kind of that roughness, the rawness, is something I think people are starting to crave.
It's something I've always craved. I love like homegrown horrors and just very DIY stuff that feels like you really discovered something that not a lot of people have seen. And that is kind of a goal with Plants. Like, it was great to have everyone sit down in a theater and watch it. But like the ultimate dream for something like Plants, or even the museum or that group of short films, is to play them on like contemporary art museum walls, the video installations. It would be like the ultimate dream for these pieces for me, because and theater experiences, but I think there's even different ways you can engage with the films I've made that we've at Fruitbird made, and this kind of films without any sort of traditional plot or filmmaking.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense, I mean, because it's kind of, you're in this category, kind of like Andy Warhol's films where, he filmed the Empire State Building for 24 hours, and it's like, you're not going to sit there and watch the whole thing. I did, yours isn't that. How long was Plants and how long was the museum?
The museum's like 13, 14 minutes, and Plants is 54 minutes, I want to say.
Yeah, so it's about an hour. The museum was how much?
It's like 13 minutes. It's part of a trilogy, so I don't watch it alone too much.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Because I was watching, it was part of like a short film thing they were doing at the Guild.
Anti-film.
Yeah. Shout out to the Guild and Anti-Film. I mean, I'm glad that I sat through the whole hour of Plants, because I think that was a good experience. But, if it was on a gallery wall, I would maybe come in and out and see a little bit, but that would be a different way to watch it. And I think with these kind of films, it could be shown in different contexts, and that would be cool too, But let's talk a little bit about the museum, because I thought this was really cool. So where is that shot?
The museum was shot at the Albuquerque Natural History Museum. It released in 2023, but I want to say we shot it in like 22.
Yeah.
I think pretty much after the pandemic, when the museum opened up, we were like, let's go. I think we missed the museum. And so we shot that film. And I'm glad we did when we did, because it was right before they got rid of, like, I don't know how long you've been in New Mexico, but they used to have a space exhibit in the top floor of like the, early origins of the universe, like the Big Bang and stuff, and talking about molecules and stuff. And we shot that before they renovated that. And now they've gone on to even bigger renovations.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we shot that, because as much as it's a fun film on its own, for us, it's kind of a time capsule of, part of our hometown.
No, that's a cool aspect of it. But for people who haven't seen, so you shooting like the dinosaurs, for instance, the skeletons or whatever, and so it's shots of, and maybe the camera's moving a bit, or but then there's a voiceover that's like in the voice of this creature.
Mm-hmm.
And you're imagining that like the creature has consciousness, but it's stuck in the museum, right? Is that kind of the idea?
Yep. And it's part of it. It's actually the middle part of a trilogy called the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And the beginning part is the zoo, which came out it was shot in like 2018. I want to say it came out in 2019, had a bigger release at the Guild in 2020, right before everything shut down. And it played with the whole trilogy again in 23, and that's where we premiered the museum. And the final part, the end. And specifically, the museum is our narrator character from the first film. In the first film, he's dealing with all these whimsical animals trying to tell him stuff about civilization and how he himself is trapped in a zoo. But the dinosaurs are much more aggressive because, they're bones, they're trapped here, they want to be in the ground. Yeah. And they're like these... one of the dinosaurs, I'm not going to say the full line because he curses, but he's like, this ugly human pretty much is staring at me. He put me in this box. And they're just really irreverent. And they're like, you're going to be just like us, but it's going to be your own doing.
Yeah. No, and I love it because it's like funny, but it's also serious. And it's sort of like, it's like these dinosaurs having these existential dilemmas and kind of confused about where they are. And then at one point, and I don't remember exactly when this happens, but we go into this kind of like psychedelic world that's kind of like the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey, where there's all these kind of colors and lights and things moving around. And, and then we go back into the museum, but it was kind of like we're going in and out of these different realities. So it really goes in some unexpected directions, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love those movies. And if you like that one, I do recommend the whole trilogy. And anyone who's seen the museum, I recommend the whole trilogy because we wanted to make something really psychedelic with those. Kenny is a great editor, and he edited all three of those films. And he did rotoscoping for parts. In the museum specifically, when the Coelophysis is burping in the narrator's face and his hand is red, he's like, this is how dinosaurs give the bird. That's rotoscoping Kenny did. And in the first part of the trilogy, there's a peacock eating like purple grass. And Kenny did that rotoscoping. Insane effects that we did he did on just Adobe. So like a lot of those films work because of Kenny's editing work. So I got a big shout out that.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool, I think. So where can people is it free? Is it available online?
Mm-hmm. Fruitbird Films, we have a lot of films free on our YouTube channel. We actually just put out Robert Velasquez feature documentary, or like mid-length documentary about Albuquerque called The Bluffs. That played twice at the Guild in the past, like 24, I want to say, and once in 25. So if you missed that and have been interested, it's now free on our YouTube along with all of our short films. So the museum's part of the trilogy upload on there. And our earliest short film groups are the W trilogy, which are more narrative. They're still experimental. They're very David Lynch inspired. They're very early works of ours.
Yeah.
We even have like our college work on there and a comedy skit show we do called Fruitbird TV.
Yeah.
So we have lots of work to check out. And plants will be up for free before Animals comes out. But right now, we're waiting to see if there's any more theater opportunities for plants.
Yeah. Are you looking into film festivals?
Not for plants. With vaporwave's legality of the sampling, it just probably isn't worth the money because festivals do cost a lot. We have a film going through the festival circuit right now. That's kind of the priority. And I wish plants could be too, but we got to pick and choose with resources. And we have aspirations of like showing these movies on like alleyway walls just randomly. So once we get that figured out, I'm sure plants will be randomly coming to a wall in downtown Albuquerque.
Yeah, very cool. But I mean, people can go to Fruitbird on Instagram. You have an Instagram?
Yep, we have an Instagram, and from the Instagram bio, we link to our YouTube, our Patreon, if you're a huge fan of us.
Great.
So yeah, our Instagram leads to all places.
That leads to
Fruitbird.
everything. So that might be that we'll put that link, and then people can check you out. So how did you get started in filmmaking?
My entire life, for the most part, I've wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be a zookeeper really bad growing up, and I just was not very good at school. I'm dyslexic. I didn't find that out until like senior year of high school, or officially find it out. I'm sure there's people suspicious, but I had a very difficult time in school. So my self-esteem towards like academics was very low. And it's funny, now I know you don't need a big degree to be a zookeeper. You just need, passion. But when I was a young person, like very young, like elementary school, I was like, yeah, I'm not passing college biology courses. And for some reason, I thought life would be easier as a filmmaker. And it's probably not, but I love it with all my heart.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of theater as a teenager, and I've just spent a lot of time studying it. And I've definitely been into different things. Like, I didn't start out as like an 8-year-old being like, I'm going to make formless films.
Yeah.
I definitely had more normal little kid inspirations like Spielberg and Lucas. And as I got older, it was Tarantino and Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
And just eventually David Lynch opened my mind to just the wider world of cinema, and I started watching a film a day, and I've been doing that for years now, probably 6 or 7 years now. I've been watching a film a day, so I'm pretty proud. I think I have a diverse taste in cinema. But for the films we're talking about today specifically, my biggest like filmmaker inspirations are probably like Werner Herzog documentaries, very specifically Fata Morgana and Into the Blue Yonder, which Fata Morgana was originally going to be a sci-fi, and it just kind of changed over the course of the film, and the narration became Aztec creation myth. But that was actually filmed in Tunisia before Lucas filmed in Tunisia. So if Herzog would have made it a sci-fi, he could have stopped Star Wars from existing. And I find that very fascinating. Like we were talking about the other day, like film could have really gone in a different direction. Like, mainstream, what we consider mainstream film today might not have been what audience is picked at different points. And I find that really fascinating with films like Fata Morgana. I'm going on a tangent now, but
no, but I think about that a lot. I think about back in the early days in the 1920s, there were a lot of people doing experimental animations and all kinds of weird things, and like the German expressionist stuff and the Russian constructivist, all this stuff that's like weird and avant-garde, and then other people trying to do kind of more narrative stuff. And then I think as and as sound comes on, and it's just the idea of films kind of coming more in the theatrical tradition and being narrative and understandable became the thing. And then with Spielberg and all that, these kind of blockbuster
became corporate at a point.
Well, no, but like the idea, they're big fun action films that are sort of for the whole family, and all the superhero stuff and the sci-fi, that's become like a major thing. But yeah, it could have gone in different directions from the beginning in the 20s. And what a interesting world it would have been if instead of having Star Wars, Werner Herzog was like Spielberg. He would like, because we know Herzog and he's certainly got plenty of fans, but he's not at the level of Spielberg in terms of mass appeal. But what if he were, and Spielberg doing his films was considered kind of like the unusual one, I don't know. It's just it's interesting to think it's things are not inevitable, and so who knows what'll happen. We were just talking. You said that you saw I Love Boosters, the new Boots Riley film, which I saw too, and I love it. I think it's fantastic, and that's got really high production values, but it's a pretty experimental and not what we normally expect out of Hollywood. And I think it's amazing that people like that do exist and they can make films now. So that gives me hope.
Oh yeah, filmmakers like Boots Riley gives me tons of hope, and films like I Love Boosters, like just the fact he was able to have so much control over like every visual detail of that beautiful production design and costume design and the makeup, like the animation, the little bits of animation in the film. And again, that kind of practical, tactile sense that I appreciate. I think he's one of those filmmakers that really is championing. Oh my God.
It's a hard word to say, yeah. But championing what?
Just practical effects and just very creative, bold visual filmmaking. He's a surrealist, and I think we forget that because a lot of surrealists are dark and brooding, kind of like David Lynch. Not that he himself is dark and brooding, but his films can be very dark.
Right,
almost horror-like. But he's definitely like a more comedic surrealist, but with very, very serious things he's talking about and trying to teach us. And that's something that inspires me as someone who also wants to try and better the world with art.
Yeah, absolutely. And we probably don't have too much more time, but I did want to bring up another thing, which is that I think that, with plants and I guess animals, which I'm excited to see, you're dealing with nature in a kind of experimental way and a kind of like and psychedelic way. And there's there's a documentary called Listers that's about bird watching. But it's, these two guys, and it sort of has a bit of a stoner vibe, you could say. And then Zach Galifianakis has a TV show now called This Is a Gardening Show, I think, which I've been watching, which also, it's kind of like this, like, sort of like stoner nature show or something in a way. And I think that so this seems like a movement, but a thing that's happening that you kind of fit into, maybe.
And that was actually definitely a goal of mine, is to make kind of a nature doc for stoned adults. So I'm glad there's other things kind of helping make that a genre.
And you don't have to consume any substances to appreciate it. And people came, but I'm just saying it's, if you do, you might enjoy it also. So, it's kind of, that's a different audience, that, I think isn't always what you think of when you think of like, oh, I'm going to make it's like, I don't think that that's the audience like David Attenborough was going for when he did his stuff, although I'm sure he gets some of them too.
Yeah, he gets me.
So, what do you think about, what I want to end on a very portentous question, the future of filmmaking. Are you or your own films in particular? Do you feel hopeful? Do you feel excited about what you're doing now, what you're going to be doing in the future?
On one hand, I'm very scared because the truth is there's just a lot less people going to the theaters. When I went to see I Love Boosters, I was the only soul. I went to the Thursday night screening, to be fair, because I went to see it right away. When I went, it was
packed. I was
good.
I was sat between two other people because there weren't any other seats. So
yeah, I had the whole theater to myself, which sometimes is fun, but not for I Love Boosters. I wanted everyone to be there. I still had a great time, but I am worried about it just being sustainable for like crew members in the union and stuff, because I work in the film industry, and this year has been really rough in Albuquerque. Last year was really rough for a lot of people too. I just got lucky, got on a few indie films, or one indie film, just a lot of days. But it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like on one hand, like it might help like my personal films and the films of Fruitbird and my peers. Like if the studio system falls apart, like I'm never going to quit making movies. It's what I love more than anything. Yeah. I know there's other local filmmakers doing different kinds of things. They also have that kind of passion and would never give it up. So it could be an opportunity for a lot of just unknown voices to find their niche and find their audience. I hope at very least that's what we get. But I hope that just humans want art and movies help connect us. Yeah. And there's a scene in the Night is Short, Walk On Girl, which is an anime film where the main character meets the god of the used bookstores, and he explains to her, or the used book markets, and he explains to her that like this author was inspired by him, and their real life encounters inspired this book, and this author's suicide inspired this author to write this body of work. And that's how I feel about all art. And especially because I watch a lot of film, I notice it a lot in film. Like we are all so similar. Like our similarities always outweigh our differences. And I think film is one of the best ways to connect it's kind of soulfully with people from different times that may be long dead, from different religious backgrounds or countries and speak different languages. But at the end of the day, we all go through the human experience. And that's why I think cinema is important. And even if it goes through a hard time, that's why I think it's really important that any one of us that like really cares about it fights for it. And it just we got to make our movies against all odds without AI.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're doing it. And I'm glad there's places like the Guild that are supporting local filmmakers and people that are doing some unusual things. And if you like this kind of stuff or you think you might like it, check out what Fruitbird does, support local cinema. And thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me. And thank you to the Guild Cinema for giving us a place to exist.
Absolutely.